Hi there, and welcome to How To with Ann Malum. When deciding to do this podcast, I really wanted to create something that could give people real tools on how to execute on certain things. So often we talk about things on such a macro scale that, yes, leaves people inspired, but with no real idea on what the steps are to make something in their own life happen. I challenge and encourage and probe my amazing guests to get granular and specific on their strategies, their mindset, their tactics, and their methodologies so that you can learn practical, actionable steps to best optimize your confidence, career, health, and wealth. What's up, everybody, and welcome to How To with Ann Malum. We are thrilled to have Nate Barger with us today, and his how-to is how to create generational wealth using other people's money, which sounds like a good idea to me. Nate Barger is a real estate investor and entrepreneur with over 16 years of expertise in the real estate industry. He currently holds $250 million in real estate and is under contract for $90 million more. His online community, BRRRR Invest, boasts over 200,000 members with approximately 2,100 new members joining every week. And his highly regarded BRRRR Invest Academy champions real estate investors, old and new, to scale quickly and reach their highest goals. Welcome, Nate. One, I love real estate. I've owned several properties, and I love the passive income of it and the appreciating asset. So I'm really excited to dive in this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, let's just dive in a little bit of your history so people can get a little understanding of who you are and why you're sitting here today and how you learned how to do what you know how to do.
Well, like anybody else who became successful in this world, I started off with a rich father who gave me everything. And no, I'm just kidding, guys. Look, I grew up very poor, alcoholic parents. And, I guess the one thing my parents didn't take from me, though, was my independence, because I had to be independent at a really young age. And so I kind of had a rough childhood, but I embraced and I loved it. And by the time I was 14, I got sent away to a children's home. By the time I was 22, I'd been in and out of prison 2 times for selling drugs. And my whole 20s, I just kind of drifted and tried to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I mean, I made a lot of money selling weed, but you can't do nothing with that money, really. So by the time I was 29, I became a pretty bad alcoholic. And I had millions of dollars from selling weed, but couldn't do nothing with it. You couldn't buy real estate, and the writing was on the wall. The feds were watching me. And so I did the only thing I knew how to do. I cried out to God. And he sent me an amazing wife who I'm married to today. She helped me get sober, and we started the real estate business. And that was about 2005. By 2010, I was bankrupt. I did everything.
So wait, how old were you in 2005, Nate?
In 2005, I was 30.
Okay, cool. So 2005, 30, and then 35 bankrupts. And how old are you today?
I'm 47.
Okay, cool. All right, take us back to 2000 and 2005.
So 2005, I thought I knew everything. I was just, young, energetic, and I found real estate, and I was just like, wow. And I found it at the best possible time ever, right before the collapse. So I bought about 250 units in 5 years. And
with what money? If you said you couldn't use the money from weed, how did you get the money to do that?
So I learned how to BRRRR. It's called BRRRR, buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So I borrowed $38,000 to buy this property. I bought it for $5,000. It was like literally falling down. I went in there and I renovated it, and I had $38,000 in it. It took me 38 days to do. I went to, this is back when they were doing, they were called ninja loans, no income, no job, no asset. And so I was getting loans done back then. That property appraised for $95,000 when I was done. The bank, which I still remember the bank, was Oak Street Mortgage, came and they said, we don't know about that. It looks like you just bought the property for $5,000. We're going to get another appraisal and you got to pay for it. And I thought, man, that's really crappy. But because I did a really nice job on this property. The second appraisal a week later came in at $105,000. And I said, well, can I use that appraisal? They said, yeah, you can use it. And so they gave me 80% of that, which was right around $82,000 cash out. So I got $82,000 out. I paid my investor back $38,000, and I took that money and I kept doing this process over and over and over again. Well, I got up to 10 properties. And the first year I did over 10 properties. And now I got all these properties. They're sitting there vacant. I go in and I get a property management company. And after 2 weeks, I call them. I said, hey, man, you got them things leased? Because these, mortgage payments are eating away at my money. And they said, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that quick. And I said, well, look, man, I need my properties back. I ran an ad and I literally, on a weekend, I rented every property out myself. And I thought, wow, man, you got to be empowered. You got to do things yourself. It's not that hard. And so I called them leased, and then I just kept doing it over and over and over. And I accumulated 250 units, but I didn't know what areas to buy in. I didn't know about reserves. I didn't really know how to do the renovation process. There was so much I didn't know about. And when a Great Recession came, I got demolished. I lost everything, Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And I had to reflect back on my life.
Let's stop there, Nate, because I have so much to say and I want to ask you some questions about that, because and then we'll get into the next chapter. It's so easy to look at somebody who is successful and just sort of think like, oh, he's always just been that way or she's always been that way. And what you just said about the risk that you took going in for $38,000, there's risk to that, right? If something doesn't work out, you owe that money and got to figure it out. With Solid Core, we have 90 plus studios, and it was the same. I took all of my money to open Studio One. And there was a time 9 years ago that we had one studio. And how that became 90 some studios is I took the profits from Studio One, put it in Studio Two. But what people also need to understand is if Solid Core didn't work out, right, in the commercial real estate business that is commercial leasing, you have to sign 10-year leases. So I signed my first 10-year lease and put all of my money in. And it's a great success story, but there was so much riding on this. And I'm sure you felt the same way, that it was like, I got to make this work. Like, I'm taking everything I got, putting it into this. And if this thing doesn't work, not only did I lose almost $200,000, I owe this landlord 10 years of rent, somehow, some way. So it's just like that level where it feels uncertain and it feels scary. It's going to be there for anybody, but you need it to be to motivate the shit out of you to figure out how to do it. And the other thing I love that you said, which is worth saying again, there's so much that you didn't know that you said, Nate, about that whole process. And we're going to get into, again, bankrupt and starting over again. But all of the entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs out there, you guys, you have to be okay with that. There is not one entrepreneur I've talked to who's sitting in a seat of success today that knew everything when he or she started. There's so many lessons along the way. There's so many mistakes. There's so many moments. That is how we learn. And it can be uncomfortable. It can be bumpy, but there's no other way around it.
And I just want to add on to that I tell people all the time that when I came out of bankruptcy, it was so hard. I never had a job in my life except for 2 weeks working in rallies when I was 15 years old. I never had a job. So it was either I'm not going back to selling drugs. I'm not. I said I cannot do that. I will go work at McDonald's, but McDonald's wouldn't give me a job because I have 4 felonies. It was so hard that literally every day I wanted to give up. And when I say every day, I booked my schedule so busy. I remember one time at 4 o'clock, I had a 5-minute break. And in that whole 5-minute break, you know what I thought about? Giving up. It's so hard. I wanted to give up. And, man, I used to go to the movies in the matinee, just in the daytime, and just go in there and cry. Because I didn't have nowhere else to cry. I didn't want nobody to see me crying. It was that hard.
Yeah.
And so if you're experiencing that, you're on the right path. You just got to keep moving forward.
Yep. Yeah. I talk a lot on this podcast and my own personal brand about growth. And Nate, the funny thing is growth is discomfort. It is so painful. And you ask everybody, do you want to grow? Everybody says, yeah, I want to grow. But they want the result of the growth. The growth is the pain. It is the emotion. It's the tears. It's the frustration. It's the anger. It's the doubt. It's the shame. You name it. It's all of those things. And it's the resiliency and the effort to continue to push through where you're like, man, I got through that. And you start to realize how strong you are and capable and smart and resourceful. And that's what helps you take the next step and get going. But growth is not glamorous.
That's good. Yeah, you're right. That's absolutely right.
Okay, so let's get back to, now that we're giving people some of those tips, let's get back. Now you're bankrupt, 35, and the recession hits and things were going well. And did it feel like this? Did it feel just all of a sudden?
I mean, it was so painful because I look back and, man, I made over $20 million selling weed and I ain't got a damn penny. I have nothing to show but maybe 20, 30 grand worth of jewelry. And I go sell that just to pay our bill. I have nothing. I feel like a complete idiot. What did I do with my life? I worked so hard and I have nothing. And I just wanted to give up. I wanted an excuse, and the economy falling apart gave me an excuse. It wasn't really me. It was the economy that fell apart.
Yeah.
Right? But that may make you feel better, but that ain't going to provide for your family. You got to own it. And I remember one day I came home and my wife, she said, we got married. She said, all I want to do is I want to be a stay-at-home mom. We have kids. I want to take care of the kids. I don't want to have to work. She was in corporate America. She hated it. And I said, I got you. And when I came home one day, she found out how bad it was because the sheriff was coming to our door, dropping off notices. I had to go to court and foreclosure and all that. And she said, she wrote me a letter, and I still have it today. It was an email. And she basically said, I'm going to go get my job back. And I was like, wow, this woman standing by me through bankruptcy. But it felt like someone kicked me in the balls. I was like, no way are you going to get your job back. I said, I got you, and I got you. And I went out there and I worked effortlessly. And I came out of bankruptcy, and within 30 months of coming out of bankruptcy, and this was in 2013 when I came out of bankruptcy, I had enough money to retire. I had over $35,000 a month in passive income. I did not stop until I hit my goals. I didn't care about the circumstances. I didn't care about the 20-hour days. I didn't care no more about making excuses. I'm going out here and I'm getting it. Everything in the way is getting ran over. I had a 400 credit score. I had negative tax returns. I had no money. I no longer cared about that. I cared about reaching the goal, and that's all I cared about.
What was the goal, Nate?
Passive income, enough passive income to retire.
Enough passive income to retire. Okay. Yeah, listen, when shit hits the fan and when life gets that hard, again, there's two kinds of people. You can either look for the excuses and for the circumstance around you and do what you already mentioned and alluded to, which is, it's not my fault. Oh my God, everybody's hurting. The economy got everybody. And the most recent example of that is COVID, right? There are people in COVID who got in the best shape of their life. And there are people in COVID who gained 50 pounds, right? I don't care what the outcome was on either. But Nate, the reality is we have to take ownership and responsibility for our actions. That's the only way we feel empowered. It's the only way, whether it's good or bad. And I recently, stopped drinking last year because I felt like I was developing a pretty bad habit. And I'm like, I gotta take responsibility for myself. I can sit here and justify this habit my entire life, but the only person it's on the losing end of that is me. And I got to figure this out. That's right. And so it doesn't matter the circumstances. It doesn't matter the economy, the environment, the how difficult your life is, whatever it is. There are people who figure it out and there are people who don't.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So then take us through what happened next.
So what happened next was I just quit caring what people said success and what you had to do. You got to have this education. You got to look, I don't care about none of that. And I decided that I was going to put together deals and I was going to find ways to get deals funded. And 2014, about 28% of all the multifamily that traded in Cincinnati. By the end of 2015, I had over $35,000 a month. Enough money to retire, because when you do real estate, a lot of times you're not paying federal taxes because of the bonus depreciation, the way that taxes are structured. And so, that's $400,000 a year after tax. And so we went down to Florida, said, we're going down here. We're just going to move to Florida. We went down in there for 4.5 months. My wife wanted to come back. But in the middle of bankruptcy, I would take her around and I would show her this neighborhood that we live in now with multi-million-dollar homes. And I would say, we're moving here. And she never once laughed at me and said, we're bankrupt. What the hell are you talking about? Because see, you got to envision things before you can actually do them. And so by envisioning things and talking about them, you actually subconsciously start taking steps towards making that happen. And it was great. And when I came back from Florida, though, I realized the value of my time. I didn't need to work anymore. So now if I'm going to work, it's going to take a lot more to get me to work. So I'm talking to my partner, Mike, and he says, hey, Nate, we got this deal. We kind of ran the numbers. I said, man, we can make $1.1 million, $1.2 million off of that deal. I was like, man, it ain't worth our time. And he said, Nate, did you just say $1 million isn't worth our time? I said, yeah, man, it's a lot of work. And he said, what are you saying? I said, Mike, there's better utilization of our time out there. You can never get to the best utilization of your time if you're chasing paycheck to paycheck. You're too busy worrying about paying bills. And that's why you have to invest your way to retirement. You can't save your retirement. And that's my passion, is showing people that, how money works. You go to school for 12 years and they tell you, go get great grades just so you can go to college for 4 years, just so you can pay off student loan for the next 20. And let's say you did really well and you got straight A's, and then you went to great colleges, and I ain't knocking colleges. Then you go get a job at Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs just the other day said, you know what? 3,600 of you guys gone. Guess who they're not firing? They're not firing you. They're not firing me. So you guys got to get out here and own your future.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm passionate about that stuff too, and we're going to get into it, guys. I also want to give a shout out to your wife, because I love that, right? The worst thing she could do is when you're talking about the future you're trying to build and her doubt you, laugh in your face, whatever. How is that going to get her any closer, or you as a team any closer to something you're working toward? And it's just a reminder for anybody out there, even at work, with your friends, with your family, with your sister, with your dad, with your brother, with your spouse, when you laugh at someone's dreams or doubt that, don't think that they ever forget that. And I've been in plenty of places of taking the steps that I've taken, and people just thinking that it was crazy or, naive or Pollyanna. And again, it wasn't trying to be hurtful. They're trying to do it from a way to protect me. But there's also a really good message there, and making sure you're not only just surrounding yourself with people who are truly supportive of what you're trying to do and believe that you're going to get there, but also surrounding yourself, with people and asking advice from the right people who are going to fill your cup in that way. And I've just, like, I'm sure you too, Nate, at some point you just sort of block out the negativity, the Debbie Downers, the people who always are, worrying, anxious, what could go wrong. It's like, I don't have time to think and talk about that. Like, that energy is just not useful or helpful. So I don't want people to disregard that. Think about those groups that you're spending time with, and if those people are supportive and positive or disempowering, and critical. There's a big difference in our support systems.
No, and two things that you said there too. Number one, and I'm sure you've experienced this growing your business, the negative energy, all that. When you're building a business, you don't have time to deal with your emotions. You're like, look, I'll deal with my emotions later, but I got things that I got to get done. And then number two, there is, in my opinion, not one successful man out here that does not have a successful partner. That is what does it, because we got to realize we're not really doing this for us most of the time. We're at a certain level where we're happy. And so you got to find your why. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing what you're doing? It's probably you've already reached your goals and surpassed them, right? You're doing it for other people. You got to identify who that is, because in your times of wanting to give up, you got to remember you're not giving up on yourself. You're giving up on them. Yeah.
It's funny you say that, and I'll say one more thing, because I'm starting my third effort, and you're not wrong, right? I've built enough wealth for myself. Like, I'm good. And then my next company, will that contribute to my wealth? Sure. But you know what this company is for me? It's not just providing another wellness and fitness experience. All the team members coming over, they're getting meaningful equity in this company, and they're going to, of course, work for it, and I'm going to teach them about business. I'm going to show them how this works all the way down to the coaches, so they can see at some point when they're ready to start their own business that they felt like this experience helped educate that for them. But it's like, what point is me having all this wealth and continuing to build it for mine? There's a great Jay-Z quote that he says, and I think it's Boss, the song, when he's like, around here we say you're broke if everybody is broke except for you. And I really believe in that. If you're just keeping everything for yourself and you're not using your resources and your intelligence and your access and opportunity to try to educate and uplift others, I don't got a whole lot of respect for that person who's sitting in their $40 million Park Avenue apartment and not thinking how they can be in service and help bring other people up.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
All right, now let's talk to the people about how to do this. So let's go back to that $30,000. Let's just say, Nate, there are people listening who are like, I am ready. I'm tired of working for a corporate, whatever, like real estate. I can get excited about that. Like, let's talk about how people do that from like the very first step.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways, and we could use an example of one of your gyms, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So let's say you said that you had a 10-year lease on one that was $200,000.
To build it out, so you can use the rent whatever you want. Call it $20,000
to build it out, and then how much is your square footage lease price on that?
Oh gosh, the square footing varies per place, but let's just call it $50 a square foot.
Okay, and that's with CAM or without CAM?
I mean, so CAM, you guys, is like triple net. You've got to pay for the taxes, like the building expenses, your portion of that. I mean, whatever you want. Let's make it an easy formula. So anywhere between.
Okay, let's say that, and that's 50 per month, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we're just going to use 3,000 square foot place, right? Let's say it's $50 per month. I mean, $50, which is $600 per year, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a $1.8 million a year lease. Is that right? That doesn't sound right. 3,000 times.
Well, so I'll break it down this way. If I'm not using my computer, one of our leases, 2,000 square feet in New York, is about $25,000 a month, all in.
Okay, so it's $300,000 a year. So let's say that we could get that building under contract from the landlord. The landlord sells it to us at, let's say, a 5% capitalization rate. You guys understand what cap rates are?
I think you should just explain to everybody.
Okay, so a cap rate is basically a rate of return. So if you got $300,000, that's 5% return on $6 million. That building would trade at $6 million. So let's say that you went to your landlord and you got this building under contract for $6 million, but you have the lease on it. And you say, you know what, my company over here can take a little bit more than the $300,000 lease. I'm going to bump the lease up to market lease, which is $400,000, because the rents are, you probably rented below market what it was when you got the lease, correct? So now you got $400,000, and you're going to divide that over a 5 cap. You just increased the value of that building from $6 million to $8 million. So essentially, if you have a company out here and you can control the real estate, you can create an expense for your company if it's really profitable. You can shift that money over to the real estate side, which then comes in passively. You don't have to pay FICA on that, which is your 15.2, your match. It comes in as passive income, but you also are able to take accelerated tax write-offs on that $8 million. So let's say $8 million, you're getting 90% of that 10% land value. That's $7.2 million. Divide that over 39 years. That's $184,000 a year write-off. It's a paper write-off. That's not a real expense. That's an expense you get just for owning the building. So you shifted your money from over here in a company that you were going to have to pay taxes on to a real estate holding company that had a lot of write-offs. Then every 4 or 5 years, when that property goes up in value, you go refinance, you pull more cash out to do more of the same thing. That's why we call it the BRRRR, the buy, the renovate, the rent, refinance, repeat. And so it's a way to avoid a lot of taxes. It's a way that the wealthy people keep from paying taxes.
Yeah, listen, exactly. And once you're wealthy, right, you stay wealthy. It's very difficult unless you're just completely spending your money everywhere. When your money starts to make money and you have access to borrow money on a percentage, so you're never taking out your profits. Once you get to that level, let's talk about somebody. So I get the commercial real estate piece. I still think that might be someone like, what? I don't have $6 million to buy a building. Let's just say I have $50,000. Like, what do I do to get into real estate to start to produce that passive income for myself? And I'm ready to take the leap.
So you want to find an off-market deal when it's run down. Let's say you find a deal and it's probate, somebody died and the kids are like, I don't want it. And you go over there, it's been sitting in probate for 12 months. It's over.
What does probate mean for people?
Probate is what happens when somebody dies and their asset, they don't really have a will to pass it on to. And it happens a lot of times. You'll have a house that maybe goes into probate, or maybe somebody inherited a house and they say, I don't really want this house. I just want some money. So the house may be worth. Go ahead.
Where do you find those? How do you find probated properties?
You can go to your local court index, or a lot of times if you see a sign on the side of the road that says house for sale, 3-bedroom, blah, 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 take that number down, call that person. That's a wholesaler. They're trying to put you in their list. They want to put you in their list and they want to wholesale you a deal. Mm-hmm. They may spend their time to go out and find these deals for you, and they may mark on $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 on top of that. You're not concerned with what they're making. You're concerned about, does the project make sense for me? So you're going to find a property that you can come in that's below value, and it's below value because it's distressed. It's got water leaking in. It needs a new roof. The air conditioning's old. The carpet's old. It needs a new kitchen. And you're going to find one of these, and you're going to see what it's worth after you repair it. You're going to buy it undervalued. I'll give you an example. One I just bought. I bought one for $65,000. Mm-hmm. We put $50,000 in it, but that $50,000 in renovation that we put in it would have cost about $90,000 if I called a company up. So you don't call company up. You manage the project yourself. And by doing that, I was able to save $40,000 on the construction. I'm all in on that property for $115,000. That property appraised at $190,000. I went back to the bank. I borrowed 80% of the $190,000, which was roughly $150,000. I only had $115,000 in the property. So I walked away with all my original cash back and $35,000 tax-free. That $35,000 you don't have to pay taxes on. It's a loan. Then I go find somebody who's going to lease that building from me, and they're going to pay the mortgage. On top of them paying the mortgage, I'm going to be left with, after I pay the mortgage, I'm still going to have a couple $100 a month in positive cash flow. I'm going to have a couple $100 a month in principal reduction. And if you buy in the right area, you're going to get appreciation on that property too. That property is not going to be worth $190 in 5 years. It's going to be worth $220. You're not going to owe $150. You're going to owe $135. That's how you create wealth. You do this time and time again. That's how I created wealth. I started off buying $5,000 houses in the hood. Now I buy Hilton, Marriott, IHG hotels all over the country using the same exact method. And I know you say, well, how am I going to come up with the $65,000? How am I going to come up with the $50,000? You have to first get educated, because you want to make sure you're buying in the right area. You buy in the wrong area, you're going to come back. That $190,000 house is not going to go up in value. You got to make sure you're buying in appreciating areas. You got to do that based off what's called job multipliers. You figure out what kind of basic jobs are coming to the community, and they have multipliers on them. So let's look at non-durable goods, durable goods manufacturing. Durable goods is a good that's going to last over 3 years, like a car. For every one job they bring into the community, you ever wonder, why are they giving them so many tax incentives? Because of the multipliers. That one job is going to create 8.2 other jobs. So if they're bringing in 1,000 jobs, you're really bringing in 8,200 plus that 1,000, and that's 9,200 jobs. For every 2 jobs you bring in, you're going to need 1 new house. So if we underwrite this area and we say, all right, they're bringing in 9,200 jobs, we're going to need 4,500 new houses. And then you back and you say, well, hold on. There's already some vacants in this area. How many vacant houses do we got? We got 800. Whoa, we have a shortage of 3,700 houses in this area. Okay, what can I buy a house for and renovate it? I can buy it and be all in for $140,000. The cost to build new is $300,000. You see where the opportunity is? The opportunity is going to be buying before the demand is there. You're buying ahead of the curve. And when you come in and you start buying and you know these jobs are coming, you just make massive amounts of money. We do it on hotels. We buy ahead of big developments and big projects. And we come in and we provide workforce housing for people. We show people how to do this because this is where the real wealth is made, because you get compound interest. You get you get compounding the value of your property year after year after year.
That's awesome. And I think it's really important to remember, guys, that like it's starting with one, and it's really easy. That I want that right.
That's what I started with.
Right.
That's what
I started with. And anybody out there, you start with one, you have a day one, there's all of these things. But one of the things that Nate is really saying that is important, and again, it sounds like, Nate, you have an online community and a program that people can come and learn more, is you got to get educated, right? It's like willing to do this, yes, but then learn as much as you can. I mean, Nate, all these things you're talking about now, you didn't know any of this stuff on day one. You were just like, I'm going to invest in this one property. I'm going to renovate it myself, which again, where did you learn how to do that, by the way?
I didn't have any other options. We were going to sell drugs or do properties. And then when I failed, I said, I will never fail again. The average millionaire goes bankrupt 3.5 times. I said, I am not going through this again. I'm not taking my wife through that. I want to know everything about everything. I studied and studied. I took programs. I spent money on education, and I spent, tens of millions of dollars developing not just myself, but my business.
Yeah. I love that. Again, it's just like constantly reinvesting in yourself and your business. And guys, that's how you get there, right? You have one property, and then you have 2, and then you have 3, and then you have 4. And again, you're going to learn different things along the way, but I'm just a big believer, and you learn by doing, and it doesn't have to be either or. People always try to get people to like pick binary sides. It's like learn by doing and read books and listen to podcasts and get in touch with experts, in programs. And I always find it funny too, people reach out. I'm sure it happens to you too, of like, oh my God, Ann, I want to build a business too. I'd love to learn how you did it. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? And it's just like, you'll spend $50,000 going to school for something, but like, you want me to give my time away for free on how to do that. And I just always encourage people to be investing in themselves, time and money. Again, read the books. If you need to understand finances and you feel like you have a nascent understanding, read Investments for Dummies. Guys, there's no shame in that, but the longer you stay uneducated, the longer you're going to stay poor or not wealthy or whatever that is. So again, starting with somewhere, it's no different than losing 20 pounds or something else. You have to have a day one, and you need to trust that the consistency in what you're doing and how you're showing up, you're going to continue to learn, and you're going to continue to have more information, continue to make better decisions.
And you are absolutely right. There are so many people that are so fearful. They're so afraid to fail. They don't realize that they want to be a millionaire. There is not one single millionaire out here that has not failed. The only person that has not failed in life is a person that has not tried.
Yeah.
And so a lot of you guys, you have your job, you hate it. You are living your worst case scenario right now. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say you pull all your money. I just had a tech guy, joined my program in March. He bought 3 houses last year. He quit his W-2. He quit. I said, dude, after 3 houses, he said, Nate, I'm making $180,000 a year. I've been in tech for 20 years. I started at 120. I'm done. He said, I saw how easy it was to make money doing these 3 houses. And he said, my worst case scenario, he said, I pulled all my money out of my 401k. My worst case scenario is I fail and I have to go back to the job that I was at. So a lot of you guys are working at your worst case scenario right now.
Oh my God, Nate, it is so good. People do this all the time. And I think it's important to say again, because we think our worst case scenario is, oh my God, I'm going to lose all my money. I'm going to be homeless. My husband's going to, and we make it diabolical. And it's like the chances of that happening are like 0.0001%, but you've convinced yourself that's a real reality where the
reality, and I'm sorry to cut you, but the reality is this: you are in control of if you fail or you succeed. And I can guarantee you that you will fail if you get out here, but you will only stay failing if you don't get back up.
Right.
You see, failure, everybody goes through failure, and it's okay to fail. It's not okay to lay on the ground. Get back up. Finish running that race.
Right. Yeah, I walked by. I took a picture yesterday. I was walking down 7th Avenue, and I took a picture of a vacant space. And guess who was there before that vacancy? Starbucks. And I just like smiled at myself because Starbucks is, whatever billions of dollars. And in essence, that store failed. The company's not a failure. Solid Core's had locations that have shut down. It's like, but it's 6 out of 100. You know what I mean? Like those are going to happen. It's going to happen. I don't focus on that. It's like, listen, if we're losing money, close it, let's move on. But like there's all of these tiny failures within a system that are learning opportunities. And it's like, that's part of everybody's journey. If you're playing big enough and you're pushing hard enough, something at some point is not going to go as planned.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So let's talk about some of these taxes things you're talking about here, because I think that that's important too. And then we're going to get into just a couple more questions. So when you talk about tax advantageous, I mean, I know some of this stuff. I'm not a real estate expert like you are, but can you talk to people around capital gains and some of these appreciation and things, and how when they make money off of their house, if they invest in another house, I forget the term of that off the top of my head, the
1031 exchange.
Yeah, thank you, 1031. Let's just go over a couple of these. You don't have to tell me all of them, Nate, but like what are 2 or 3 that you think are really important for people to learn about?
Well, I think people need to understand that even as a W-2 employee, if you buy rental property, you create losses by borrowing money. And so let's say you bought that property for $75,000 and you put 50 in it. You were in it for 1.25. I think I said 115, but you're in it for 1.25. That 50,000 that you borrowed, let's say 40,000 of that is kitchen cabinets, countertops, appliances, painting, flooring, light fixtures, and plumbing fixtures. You just borrowed that 40,000 from a bank. That $40,000 now becomes a year 1 tax write-off for you. That's the IRS tax code. So let's say you go sell another property and make 40,000. That $40,000 accelerated depreciation will wipe out that gain. Now, it is 2023 and they did change it. You can't take 100% of that this year. You could take 80% of that. So you would effectively be able to take 32,000 of that. If you are a W-2 employee, you have what's called non-passive loss limits. Once you start to make over 100,000 a year, you're capped at 25 grand. You can't reach that 32. Now, I got projects that I get $2 or $3 million accelerated depreciation. I go sell a building over here, make $2 or $3 million. I pay no taxes because that's the way the system's built. It's built to have you spending more money and not keeping your money. They want that money out there, flowing out there. Nate, you got to continue to spend more money and create velocity in the economy. Just like you, how many jobs have you created? And you borrow money, you buy equipment that creates jobs all over the place. Then you create jobs for your employees. So you got to understand, we're so afraid of the banks. The banks aren't going to give me money. And that damn guy in the bank's about to get fired if he don't give out some money. He's sitting there. His job is to give out money. So go in there and figure out how you can get the money, because borrowing the money creates the tax write-off. And if you are a stay-at-home mom or dad and your spouse works, then you can create losses over here. You can become a real estate professional. I got a buddy of mine that makes $2 million a year. His wife is a stay-at-home mom. And he's like, dude, I'm paying like $800,000 a year in taxes. I said, well, look, let's go buy you a hotel. We're going to have you invest with us. And you're going to come in and you're going to be able to get some of these losses. He can't get them because he's a W-2 employee. But now his wife is a real estate professional. She's able to take her losses and wipe out her husband's gains.
So Nate, you can't, even if you have a side hustle with real estate, if you're a W-2 employer somewhere, these losses don't apply to you.
And it's really hard to qualify because they're going to say that's not your primary source of income.
Got it.
You're an employee. You can't do that. So a W-2 employee is capped at 25,000 and non-passive loss limits. And once you hit 100,000, it phases out. Between 100,000 and 150,000, it phases out to zero. So for every $2 you go over, you lose $1. And that's how it phases out from 100,000 to 150,000.
Got it.
So even people that aren't making very much money, if you buy a piece of real estate and investment property, you can claim up to 25,000 of that against your income. So let's say you're making 95,000. Now your income's all the way down to 70,000. You just created a paper loss by buying a piece of real estate. They're not going to teach you this stuff in school, which is what I'm very passionate about, helping 10 million people become millionaires. Because I was appalled that I learned all this stuff. And then I started hanging around people that went to Harvard and all these other great schools. And I'm like, man, you guys don't know none of this stuff. Like, what did you go for?
Yeah.
And then they're still paying off debt 15 years later. And here's the crazy thing. When I went bankrupt, I had millions of dollars in debt. Guess what? When I came out of bankruptcy, I owed none of it. I got a friend of mine that had $200,000 in student loan debt. He went bankrupt. All his real estate stuff got wiped out, but he's still on the student loan debt. You can't get rid of it.
I mean,
it's the worst thing.
It's the worst. I'm so skeptical, Nate, too. And again, it's like college and education is important, but man, that system is set up to keep people, I don't even know what the right term is, but I have so many friends who literally have $600 to $800 a month loans, and they have to make decisions on their jobs on how to pay those off every single month. It owns them. And I'm just like, exactly all the stuff that I've learned, all college did for me. I'm not saying I didn't learn anything, but it taught me how to be an independent adult. I moved away for college. I did all these things, and I had to learn to live on my own, how to figure things out. And that's what my college experience, frankly, really fostered me to be an entrepreneur because of that, uncertain situations and how do I do this and how do I do that? But the education cost of those things in my mind is like, you don't need to go to an Ivy school. I went to a state school, $6,000, a year to get my degree. And yeah, I do not envy people who have hundreds of thousands of dollars in education debt.
Well, I want your audience also to think about this. Two things. Would you send your kid intentionally to something that they only have a 30% success rate at? So I'm going to send you off, and I know you're only going to have a 30% success rate. Now, if you do make it out successfully, on average, you're going to have $37,000 that you owe this place that you just gave 4 years of your time. Mm-hmm. That's college. Only 30% of the people that go to college actually graduate. And 50% of them, when they graduate, owe $37,000 on average. It's crazy, and they've spent 4 years of their time. And I want you to really think about this in your audience. 54% of the jobs that are out here in the United States right now are on the chopping block by 2030. Automation is taking over. You go to these restaurants, they got robots running around. You go to the universities, they got robots driving around delivering food. You got doctors that aren't even safe anymore. If you have to go to a doctor, he sends you to another doctor. Google has this new thing they're developing. It's a pill you take. It goes through your body, goes through your whole bloodstream, gives you a report back on exactly what's wrong with you. And I think in 10 years, doctors are going to be, it's going to be as obsolete the way we do it. This stuff is moving forward so fast. And I want you to think about, what are you sending your kid to school for if you do? And is that job even going to be here in 10 years?
Yeah. And just, again, all of the lessons that, successful people have, and freedom to go do, whatever it is that they want to be doing. You don't get that, from a full-time job. You've got to have the flexibility of passive income at some point in your life, if that's important to you. And most people that I know want more freedom in their life and don't want to have to be somewhere, Monday through Friday doing a job. This was really helpful, Nate. I think it's really educational for folks, which again is what I want this podcast to be. So thank you for sharing so much knowledge. And again, guys, I've done my own real estate, just investment properties that I've had rented out through Airbnb. Same thing, looked at the areas, appreciating assets. It has been wildly successful on my end. I'm a big proponent of real estate, especially as you're trying to diversify your own portfolio and take advantage of Nate's program, right? Go and educate and learn real estate. Everybody is going to need a place to live. We talked about phasing out. People need a place to live, right? That's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I think it's a great thing to learn a little bit more about. So Nate, I ask questions at the end of each podcast, and depending on how much time we have left over, it depends on how many questions I ask. So I'm just going to ask you one, and it's it's kind of my favorite one I ask is, for Nate, for you today, because this question changes over time. When you put your head at the pillow at night, how do you know if you've had a successful day or not?
Well, I was kind to people, and I showed them empathy, even if there's somebody that was negative on social media, because I get a lot of that. You got to understand that person, that's their own fear and insecurity they're trying to project on you a lot of times when they're saying bad things about you on social media. How did I treat people, and how did I impact society today? Because that time's gone. I don't have a chance to go do that over. Did I have a moment that I regret not saying something to somebody where I felt like I could have made an impact in their life? Or did I regret snapping on somebody and saying something that I shouldn't have said that would also have an impact on their life?
Yeah. I mean, again, and you see that of what you're trying to do. Nate, you could keep all of this wealth for yourself and keep doing, but you're dedicating, the time, energy, into trying to help others to have the financial freedom that you have. And I'm sure you say this a lot, but I didn't come from money either. I love my dad. My dad's an addict. Gambling tore apart my family. He spent a lot of our money. We didn't have a whole lot. And I know you don't come from, a silver spoon in your mouth, and you've had a rough go at things and had to learn, things along the way. And I just have the utmost respect for people like that. And I think those are the true inspirations. And so for folks listening to feel like it's easy to pull excuses, parents, childhood, all these things that happened to us, there's still massive opportunity out there for you if you're willing to educate, learn, work,
Absolutely.
and frankly, believe in yourself. That's just one thing. It's like, if you got to start there, you got to know that you are capable, that you are worthy, that you are smart enough, that you are deserving. And if your belief system is not in check, it doesn't matter how much education you have, you'll never think you deserve it. So amazing. Thanks for being that example. Where can people find you in this program, Nate? What's the best place to direct folks?
Just join my free, I have a free Facebook group. We got about 235,000 people in there. One of the largest real estate groups in the country. We will be set up in over 30 cities by the end of this year. We got chapters all over the country, and we are having monthly meetups. We are showing people how to change their generational wealth. And it's astonishing to see these people build wealth and quit their jobs. BRRRR Invest, BRRRR Invest, B with 4 R's, Invest. And also have BRRRR Invest Academy. That's my academy, but you kind of got to go through there. We want to make sure it's a good fit for you, and that is something that you're going to actually go through and complete.
Amazing. Last question. Are you now using your money for all this stuff, or are you still using other people's money to buy properties and real estate?
So I have a list of investors that have been with me for years, and I syndicate capital sometimes. Usually what I'll do is me and my partner, Mike, we'll use our money to get the deal to a certain point where it's ready for investors, because the risk is, we put $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 out of pocket on the deal. That money's kind of at risk. That's our money. Once we get it to a point where we're ready to close on it, then we call it an investor capital.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks again, Nate. This was so much fun, and just appreciate your time and all the energy you brought today.
Thank you so much. You are amazing. And one last thing I want to leave you with. Like my father, I had to forgive him, because I had to realize that I would have never became the person that I was today. And you are amazing. What you're doing is amazing.
Thank you. And yeah,
you would not have became that if it wasn't for him and for him doing that stuff. You would have been just normal. Probably you would have been normal. So it takes somebody that went through something extraordinary to come out and be extraordinary most of the time.
Yeah, I agree. And thanks for that. And my dad and I have a great relationship. I've learned to accept him for who he is. And I am grateful for the experiences I've had that have brought me to the person I am today. So thanks for acknowledging that.
Amen. Well, thank you for all you do. Thank you to all you viewers. Let's get out here and own this year.
All right, Nate. Sounds great. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll connect soon.
Thank you so much.